I think your use of the phrase fun fact sort of threw me for a loop because this isn't a fun fact at all, but it's helpful for the conversation.
Mhm.
I I have not been a victim of gender-based violence, but I witnessed it.
Mhm.
Um, and just witnessing it was a absolutely life-changing moment for myself.
Mhm.
And that's an important fact that we could talk about as well today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think both y'all both provided like really good context for the conversation, just so like we know who we're talking to, the experience that we kind of are coming to this conversation with, I think is really important. So thank you. Thank you for that. Well, I think a really good place to start, just, um, piggybacking on this idea of like where we all like what we all come to this conversation with, I think it's really good for us to kind of lay the foundation with like talking about what is trauma, right? Because it's something that people throw around a lot nowadays. I don't think that everyone is really like well versed in like what exactly is trauma. So if you could speak a little bit to that.
Well, to put it shortly, it would be the emotional or physical distress from an event, a likely frightening event. And the type of event would, of course, vary. The type of reaction would, of course, vary. But that's the short version of it.
That would be the same definition that I would use as well. I have a friend who is a psychologist and a life coach, and I wish I could remember it word for word, but she said trauma is the outcome of any event that in the moment feels impossible for you to overcome. So when something happens to you that it feels like it's impossible for you to manage, trauma is the outcome of that event. And that made it a little bit more accessible for me in terms of what that could look like. I think Jessica already did something that I didn't understand early out, which is what a traumatic event looks like will vary. Because I think when we, as you say, we're talking about trauma a lot more now, but I think in the beginning, when you heard the term trauma, there was this idea that it had to be something of this massive epic scale. And if it wasn't that, then it wasn't traumatic. And then over time, I came to realize that it's a little bit more um, nuanced than that.
Yeah. I like that. I like that you both kind of highlight that this idea of like drama being like looking very differently, and it being nuanced. Is there like an example that you, or maybe two examples that you can give to like illustrate like how sometimes it can be seemingly like small or minor and like the more obvious, like to contrast that to the more obvious events that we would easily recognize as being traumatic?
The big one that people always talk about, and unfortunately, they use it to dismiss something that they would view as a small event,
Mhm.
would be, acts of war. Why would you? Well, how dare you be traumatized by something because you haven't been to war?
Mhm.
But it could be, um, I don't know that I would call this small, but emotional or verbal abuse as well, because it's just words. People think it's small. I don't know that I would consider it small, but it's not war.
Yeah, that is a really good one actually. That I definitely see that one a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the example that I would use as well. I feel like there's also a lot of people who are experiencing the outcomes of constantly being compared to somebody else and found wanting, especially when you're growing up and you have that one cousin who's really doing great at life and they're on the way to med school and they're really outgoing and you're not. And the parents just kind of constantly, why can't you be like that person? Why can't you be like that person? And over time, you just get this sense that who you are is not good enough.
Mhm.
And that follows you through your life into relationships and everywhere else.
Yeah. Is there a name for that? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it would be. I guess in a nutshell, it would be like minimization, but like, is there a word for that in the context of,
Triangulation. It's called triangulation. I don't know if there's another term for it, like Jessica. I would defer to Jessica on this one, but I know that that practice of comparing you to somebody else, especially when narcissists do it, is called triangulation.
Yeah, the involvement of another person in that comparison would be triangulation. But the overall dismissiveness, they're minimizing the impact that the event would have had. Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay. So, Carla, you kind of alluded to this, but and I want to hear from both of y'all, like in the work that you do and the experiences that you have and the view that you hold, is trauma something temporary or permanent? Is there any indicator?
For me, from my own experience and also from like the research that I've done, it's something permanent,
Mm,
but it's something that you develop the skills to cope with. And I would also say that because from my own experience, it's never not with me,
mm-hmm.
but on different days, I feel further away from it. On different days, it pops up less and interrupts my life less. So, yeah, from that perspective, I would say that, you know, it is something that's permanent, but it's something that you can get treatment for and you can get the tools to manage. And also for my coaches who are on their own journeys, over the time coaching them, you can see them kind of develop that muscle for working with it and managing it and not having it disrupt their life and being able to look at it for what it is and recognize when it's their trauma talking as opposed to having, you know, like a response to what is happening before you. But I wouldn't say that it's something that ever goes away, especially when I think about some of the older folks that I work with, who there's stuff that pops up on them and, you know, they're right back to when they were 4. And they'll be having like 2 years where it's good and it doesn't come up and then boom, one day it comes out and they're right back there.
Yeah.
I think the
Sorry.
permanent, I think the word permanent is scary to people. But while there's no cure, so to speak, um, the the way that you feel in this exact moment won't be permanent. That's not the thing that's permanent. It's just there's no there's no there's no cure, there's no pill, that sort of thing. But like Carla said, there's treatment, there's skills. There, I love the comparison to a muscle. You build muscles to endure, I guess is the word. And it's when I had the phrase right in my head, but it's when it's not sort of dealt with that, you know,
Yeah.
it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I've had people say as they build these muscles and as they learn the skills and all of that, something will happen and they'll be right back in that place they were in the moment because this is a new stimulus or a new event, or sometimes these things just happen and they'll say, I thought I was over this. But it unfortunately does not. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes you got to do a new exercise or work a new muscle. It doesn't go away completely. There's no, I'm over this, but it's a process and it'll get better with the right tools.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, I'd love to actually ask a question of Jessica because it's something that I know people deal with and it's something that I deal with where you think you're okay and something happens and it comes up. And it's not just the feeling of, oh God, I'm triggered. It's the feeling of, oh God, will I ever get to a point where this is not a part of my life? And that feeling of frustration, like, and then there are all of these thoughts that come up like, oh God, I just wish I could wipe this thing from my record. I wish I could just wipe it from my record. Will I ever get a break? You know, when does this go away? How does a person deal with those feelings? So aside from the being triggered, just this feeling that, my God, am I going to have to live with this forever?
What I like to tell people is that this one moment doesn't undo all of the progress you've made over however many months or years. Um, it's a new event that now has to be dealt with, but it does not mean the work hasn't been done. This is now just a new problem in front of you to solve. And
Mm-hmm.
it by no means that this will continue to happen consistently. Um, it just means more tools need to come in.
Yeah, I like that exchange just because I was actually gonna ask a similar question, Carla, that you asked Jessica. I was gonna say, is there not necessarily an I don't want to say an endpoint because I don't know that that's what you meant, Carla, but I just was thinking like, is there a sort of way to anticipate triggers, you know? Like I don't know that I don't know like is that something that comes up in your work?
You could have an educated guess, so you could know if the event happened at this place. If I go near, you could have those sort of predictive factors, but there will be
Mm,
times when
yeah, things you
a,
just yeah.
yeah, a name is said, or they didn't put the flippin' trigger warning at the beginning of this episode of whatever show.
Mhm.
And it just there's no way to know for sure certain stimulus won't ever happen again.
Mm,
But what you can know and the muscle that you can flex is that I've handled it before when it happened. It took me however long, or it was very painful, but I got past it that last time. I'll get
mm,
past it this time, and maybe over time it'll take less time, or it'll be less of a physical response, that sort of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with my clients, one of the things that we do early out in our sessions is because I kind of try to take a trauma-informed response, approach to coaching, is to help them to identify some of their triggers.
Mm,
Because a lot of times, like we're walking around and what we can say is, I feel like crap every time this happens, but not realize that I feel like crap or I feel like I'm in shambles is actually, oh, I'm triggered every time this happens. And so, like, I have them keep a thought log and make note of particular instances when particular thoughts tend to surface. And then
mhm.
if they can look at that at like the end of a week or like the end of a month, that they can read for trends and they can have an idea of the things that are likely to trigger them. And it's something I also had to do for myself because I was walking around feeling like crap 95% of the time. I couldn't figure out why. The
Mhm.
gag was I was living with my trigger. So then, it's kind of like every day you just wake up going
Yeah,
back to the same thing. Um, so I don't think you can ever anticipate everything, but in the beginning, when you're just learning yourself, it's useful to even identify the fact that you have triggers because some
yeah,
of us, like, we don't even know they are.
that is
Mhm.
true. Yeah,
That,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, that what you just said is a very good point, and one of the things that I'm sure you're going to ask about is, what could help, and one of those things is education. So just knowing this is what a trigger is, or knowing what's, I hate to use this word, but normal. I had a client ask me before. It was their first time ever dealing with panic attacks. And they said, "Have you ever had a panic attack?" And I said, "Yeah." And it looked like about 200 pounds came off of their shoulder because I don't know, I guess they thought it was strange or only a certain kind of person has them. And I literally, well, not literally, but it really looked like a ton of weight came off of their shoulders. So just knowing certain things can really, really, really help alleviate some things in the moment. Just knowing
Yeah.
certain things.
I can also attest to that. Language is sometimes like it's really a game changer to be able to like name the thing to say,
Mhm.
I know this thing, I know what this is. And it really, I don't know, it takes away the power in a sense, I think. So that's really powerful. That's really helpful.
I
So
do. Sorry, I feel like I keep interrupting you, but
no.
I can. In horror movies, I don't know if anybody here is a horror movie, but when there's a demon that escaped hell, if you just say their name, you
Yeah.
take away power. So I'm like, think of these negative feelings or think of this trauma as a demon and just name it. And you do take away a lot of its power. There's
Mhm.
still more work, but there's power in that name.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what do people talk about when they say generational trauma? Because now that we're talking about, these sorts of things, I'm wondering like can like you said, Carla, living with someone, if you have a parent that has generational trauma, or if you have a parent that has some sort of trauma, sorry, and they might not be aware of it, and they kind of like, can that be a pathway for generational trauma? Like, what is generational trauma?
Yeah, I actually have this really great little thing that sums it up. But I don't know if I can share my screen because when I saw the thing, it grabbed me in the throat and I was like, it's awkward. I don't really like that.
You,
But
yeah,
sure.
you should be able to right now.
All right. Bust paper on a share. All right, let me see where it is. Let me see where it is. It is here, this PowerPoint. All right, this is not the one. I saw this thing
Mm,
and it made all the sense in the world to me because it breaks it down so nicely. I don't know why it's showing us in presenter view. I'm so sorry if that's what you're seeing. Um, but it starts out with you have a set of people who survived the European wars, and then they have the trauma that's passed down through generations, where one generation has PTSD, and as a result of that PTSD, in order to cope with living with that person, the other generation becomes an alcoholic. And
mm,
then what they might inflict on the generation below is sexual abuse. And then that might, lead to some type of emotional repression, and it just passes down. And it's the same thing, like, you survive slavery and racial violence, and then that creates abandonment, and then that creates domestic violence in the next generation, and that creates low self-esteem in the next generation, and that creates PTSD. So it's like the traumas that we experience impact the ways that we engage with the people in our families, including our children, right? And then there's it, you take it a step further, and then they talk about like epigenetic trauma, which is the idea that trauma can alter you on a genetic level, and then you can pass that forward. Um, but it's this, like when you are living in pain or you're having trauma responses and you don't know how to cope with them, the survival mechanisms that you use may create trauma for the people around you. And also the ways that you act while you are stuck in this pain can also create trauma for the people around you. And we just keep handing it down. And especially inside of a family where that becomes the norm for the family. This is just the way things have always been for the family. And if that family is in a community where everybody in the community, family look the same way, then we don't know any different, because the only time I see a family that don't look like this is on TV. And TV is a lie.
I love that flow chart. That is, oh yeah, that infographic. That is really spot on. Because I think it really speaks to this idea that it's not an intentioned process of passing on trauma or creating trauma in the lives of like people we love and care about, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't excuse it either, but I don't think that I don't know that, that's a conscious thought in the minds of like our culture that this is something that sometimes we inherit, and unintentionally keep passing around,
A phrase that
Yeah.
I like, it's an explanation, not an excuse. I understand what happened. It doesn't make it okay. Let's address how to move forward.
Mhm.
Um, and something that I talk about with clients a lot as well is that following trauma, you're going to develop survival mechanisms.
Mhm.
Once you're outside of that, or once you're starting healing, some of those things were necessary back in the day, and now they're causing issues in your interpersonal relationships. And these things sort of kept you going at one time, so it's hard to throw them in the garbage. But the analogy I like to use is just check it on a shelf. You don't need it right now. It's causing some harm. Just stick it right on a shelf. Should you need it, hopefully not. It's there. It's causing issues right now. So
Mhm.
let's try to move past this. And people don't know. They don't know that their reactions are causing these issues. I think it's important too that there's a way for you to acknowledge the damage that some of these mechanisms might be causing without you being a villain or this big terrible person. Acknowledge it. Let's work on how to repair and go from there. It's okay to say I messed up or I have been messing up. Let's move forward.
So I have a really big question because confronting your elders in the Bahamas, in our culture, I would go as far to say, like that don't usually go well, whether
It does.
intentional or not, right? And so how do you broach that kind of conversation as somebody that is like you a millennial, you a Gen Z, you well aware that you inheriting trauma and you trying to stop the process or at least, trying to address it. Is there like are there any strategies you find like I don't know, maybe work better than others in trying to like broach that conversation with our elders that might not be ready to kind of have them kind of conversations?
Well,
Carlo face.
it's not going to be nice and they're not going to like it, but they're not going to die.
I
And I
like
feel like it's the best that is the best I can give you because yeah, my mother and I we have had to fight all our life. We've had to fight for that relationship.
Mhm.
And the sometimes it's uncomfortable in the house because you raised something that was relevant to you and she didn't want to hear it and you didn't decide to shut up this time. So
Mhm.
you made up your mind that you were going to say it. And I had to learn to respect that, well, she has the right to be uncomfortable
Yeah.
because whether
Mm,
I want to admit it or not, I'm telling her about herself. I'm telling her how I felt as a
Mhm.
result of things that happened. But
Yeah.
the underside of that is I'm telling her about herself. So she gonna feel away and she has the right to feel away. That doesn't mean that I need to shut up. If it's not becoming a violent and emotionally or physically violent situation, then I can remain in the discomfort of the situation and see
Mhm.
what else happens. But I'm not here to tell nobody no lie. And be like, oh, the elders, they are not. Them don't want to hear nothing. They want to, okay, some of them, right? They just want to happily live their lives because they have also survived trauma, and a lot of them are tired.
Yeah.
mm,
Options are few. And the last thing they need is us looking back and being like, well, you know?
mm,
So, like, I get it, but my mom, like, she really stuck it out. Some of the things took months, some of them took years, and eventually she was able to come back, you know? But for the most part, I was having a conversation that my mother wasn't equipped to have because the tools that I have to like
Yeah.
even talk about my trauma and identify it, my mother didn't have it. So
Mhm.
mm.
I'm telling her something and it's a foreign language to her, and she's like, okay, buckle down and get it done, work for us. Why you all want to come and talk about all these feelings? You know? And that's facts. Why do we? And I'm like, because we're a different generation now and we're
Mhm.
just going to have to work it out. Here is a slice of cheesecake. Think about your feelings. I will be in my room.
Heavy on the cheesecake.
Heavy, extra heavy, Jessica.
Um, I I love the they're not gonna die. It's uncomfortable, but a lot of necessary things are. Um, Hell, she birthed you. That was the worst thing ever. The only thing that I can say in terms of like tangible tools of how do I approach this conversation is carefully, respectfully. I like the having some food or something around, ease some tension. Um, and pick your battles. There might be some things that aren't might be too heavy for right now. So start with the easier ones first. And I love that you mentioned that we have wording that they don't. We have tools that they don't. We have freedoms that they didn't have. But like I said to my sister the other day after a conversation with my father, you can teach an old dog new tricks. So it's certainly possible. You might just have to be strategic about it. And once everybody's respectful, they could be uncomfortable. It's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I think those are some really good pointers for any conversation, but especially for one that's like as sensitive as this. I like that. So,
One,
uh-huh.
sorry, one more thing is, this would be necessary for both people in any kind of conflict, really, but definitely in a conversation like this, is to approach it from a place of curiosity, a place of sort of wanting to learn or understand what it was like for the other person, as opposed to, well, I'm just going to say, or this is what you need to know, or what you don't understand is like those sorts of things. Just this is what it was like for me. What was it like for you? That might be helpful with easing some of that tension.
Oh yeah, that is a big one actually. I think that goes for so much of the disagreements that I think we have like today. People don't want to understand anymore. They don't want to understand the other person, you know? Like they just want to be right. They just want to get their point out. They want to hit hard and fast, you know? And yeah, so I like that. I'm glad you said that.
I'd love to add one more thing, which was a layer that I like encountered with my mom is um sometimes dealing with the trauma requires that they examine things like their relationships with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And in the event that the parent has died, then that Caribbean thing of don't speak ill of the dead
Yeah.
kicks in double hard.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to have no conversation about their parents that feels like they're saying bad about their parent, especially now that they have also gone through the ranks, been parents, and understand what their parents went through. They don't want to do that. And so, like, one thing is to remind them that you can talk about how someone impacted you that wasn't positive, and it's not you disrespecting them because you are having your own experience of your own life. And just because somebody didn't do something perfect didn't mean that they didn't do the best that they can. Because I think for a lot of our elders, that feels very important to them that they continue to honor their elders. And sometimes the conversation feels dishonorable for them. And so like just that language around you can give yourself permission to think about what your mother did, and it's all right. Like she not go vex. Like I don't think that mom is over there being like, why Angela saying that? Them way there. And sometimes it feels weird because, I'm usually the one that my mother is advising. So when I'm like, look for me now, I try to advise this lady. And I'm like, it's all right, pull it together, you know? But it's that she don't want to think bad about her mother. So she don't want to examine that intergenerational link. But she needed to do it in order to examine ours.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so powerful.
Great point. That's a great point.
So can y'all talk a little bit about how how are trauma and gender-based violence related?
Let Jessica start.
The infographic you showed did a great job of connecting those. And I want to say first that most survivors of trauma do not go on to abuse other people. I want to say that first. So there's no sort of causation here, but like the infographic showed, this surviving a war might lead to alcohol abuse or substance abuse. And then there's a big correlation between substance abuse and gender-based violence. Witnessing gender-based violence does not mean there's no causation that you will now go on to commit gender-based violence. But like Carla talked about earlier, if something is done pretty consistently, in your home, in your community, you see it every day, it's normalized, you're going to think that it's normal and it's going to continue. But there's a lot of these different factors sort of happening at once, but I want to be very clear, correlation is not causation. But all of those things tend to be seen happening at the same time.
I think that's a really good. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, especially in the context of that infographic, like just having that in my my mind right now. Yeah, like thinking about, because I had never really thought that linearly, I guess, about how, a man might have some traumas that he hasn't dealt with, and how that could, that might have a disproportionate effect on the minors in the household, right? Like some might be more susceptible than others, some might be more vulnerable than others, right? That's really interesting.
I wish I could save the video. I don't know if he was currently, he was a first responder, so he might have been an EMT or some sort of first responder, and he was doing a talk for his colleagues, and he was demonstrating the difference between verbal assault and not venting, but he's like, there's a way that you can say something where you're just annoyed and now you're abusing your family. And he was like, what we in our field do sometimes is that's what he was saying. He was like, when we're at work, because of the work we have to do, we have to talk very fast, clear, direct, and loud. But when you take that home, that is
Yeah.
verbal abuse to your family. Because he swore in it, but it really drove the point home. He was like, there's a big difference between get out of my face, shut the fuck up, and hey, do you want to get out of my face, please? And it was the same words, but the delivery was very different. And he was like, in over here I'm talking to my family, over here I'm abusing my family, and we have to remember that. And that is not a conscious decision by any means. It's not the case that they're all doing that, but he was like, it's something that we have to make sure we're, what's the word, sort of compensating for when we have these interactions with our family, that you can, again, it's correlation, you can sometimes take these things home. I'm going to try to find the video.
Yeah. Isn't there a name for that too, where you have like this frustration, energy, whatever, toward someone else that you probably, or maybe that's something different, where you can't let it out on the thing or a person you really want to let it out on, and so
Displacement. Sorry, Dylan.
yeah.
You
What was
take
that?
what
Oh, did I put it?
your
Oh,
thought.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So I'm sure that can happen too, as
mhm.
well, where, I mean, especially thinking about like service jobs in the Bahamas, like people that are policemen and that, are constantly working with the public, which can be, I mean, just a different level of stress, and not having a way to properly kind of work through that, not having someone to talk to about that. I could see that
Mm.
happening a lot. And I think too, I find it really interesting, when we talk about violence, I think you brought up a really good point in that example of just like saying that, or highlighting that, violence it can be verbal abuse. It doesn't have to be the most heinous things that you can think of ever happening, right? but just kind of acknowledging like it can just be the way you talk to the way we
Mhm,
talk to very impressionable family members can have like very lasting effects.
mhm. So knowing when to take that hat off is
Mm.
important. The way you talk to your friends isn't how you talk to your boss. The way you talk to whoever is definitely not the way you talk to your toddler.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Yeah.
I really appreciate Jessica bringing up like the correlation is not causation. Um, for survivors of trauma who have triggers, it's very important to recognize how you respond to the people you love when you're triggered. And realize that even though you are hurting, you have the potential to hurt people as well. Like for somebody who, for instance, has a deep fear of abandonment or who has abandonment trauma, when they sense that somebody is about to abandon them, or they perceive or they believe that somebody, and I'm talking from my own experience, you believe that somebody is about to abandon you, you go off, right? Some people, it will be like the crying and stuff like that, but some people it's going to come out as like this extreme anger towards the person, you know? And sometimes it's after you don't trace them off that you stop and you're like, wait a minute, this person took too long to respond to my text message. And I just sent them however many paragraphs going in on them. And it's because I was triggered. The fact that they took long to respond to me made me feel like they were abandoning me. And it can become complicated because your partner is within their rights to say to you, you're abusive. Like you are abusive when you are triggered. The way that you react feels like abuse to me, right? And sometimes we can't see it because we feel like, well, what you did was hurting me because it reminded me of this thing that happened. And it's like, yeah. And while you deserve compassion, you also don't get to not take accountability for the fact that you have also created harm in acting from your own place of either being harmed or fearing harm.
Oh, I love that. Accountability. I think that's the word of 2023.
mm,
Everybody needs to familiarize themselves more. So, um how do we shift from survivor to or victim to survivor? Like, is that framing at all helpful, y'all think?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It can be difficult, but it's helpful because there's you want to go from victim to survivor to thriver. So survivor is more future focused. This is a you're shifting from acknowledging what happened
Mhm.
to how am I gonna move forward? How am I gonna pick up the pieces? How am I going to begin to repair
Mhm.
what is within my capabilities? What happened?
Okay. Would it be fair to say like Survivor is more coping oriented and I'm sorry, victim? Because it's victim, survivor, thriver, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Survivor was more coping focused as opposed to um, I almost want to say sitting in it, but victim might be looking back, survivor's looking forward, if that
Okay.
makes sense. And it
Okay.
words are powerful sometimes, just even using the word survivor. Um, and I don't know if I think that this is what happened at the beginning of this call. Carla, you referred to yourself as a survivor, and then I used the word victim, I think. Um, and immediately I wish I used survivor, but words are powerful.
Yeah, they are.
Um, I appreciate you acknowledging that. For me, it doesn't bother me. And because some days I still feel like a victim of it, you know? Um, a practice that I learned from, like how like like UN women and stuff approach it. They're like, you know what, just ask people how they want to be referred to. Because sometimes when we call a person a survivor, they're like, nah, I don't actually feel like I survived this. I'm not at that place. I don't feel like a survivor. I very much feel victimized by this thing that's happened. And then sometimes they get to another place. But there are some days being a survivor feels exhausting. I'm like, you know what? I don't have the cape today. Actually, today my romantic relationships are in shambles because I can't let a person get close to me because I was assaulted at 7. I am absolutely not surviving this shit today. I am a victim of it today. Tomorrow I might get back to surviving, but I'm a victim today. And I'm happy to have been able to make that journey, to be able to call myself a survivor and to be able to call myself a thriver. But I also fully understand the person who is like, yeah, you know what? Don't put that on me. I'm not ready for that because I am still deep in the bowels of this thing and I'm not out. I'm just 100% not out. So, yeah, yeah. But I really appreciate, Jessica, that you're really sensitive to language like that because I think sometimes we're not. You know that? Like we have the language that we're good with, and then we just kind of throw it on people. And people are like, okay, I ain't told you all of that. Like I didn't say all that. So thank you for modeling that because even I think I can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, and I think too, like to me, what I hear when I hear you say that, Carla, is that, I mean, humans aren't static in that way, right? Like we don't wake up feeling like Superwoman every day. Most days, yeah, I don't feel like the strong Black woman that people think or tell me that I am. And I think when you think about it like that, it's nice to be able to say, okay, I not necessarily I'm picking and choosing, but like I recognize that every day I'm not going to be able to wake up and give this all my might, and that's okay, I still in the fight, and that's something.
Mm. And
Mm.
I'm still in the fight, and that's something. Yes, that's cold.
Jessica, were you
The
gonna say?
tweet that right now.
well, I was just gonna say thank you, Carla, for sharing um, your experience there, and the point that people are fluid and day to day that is gonna shift, and you every day won't feel like a thriver day, and that is okay. The just making that the goal, I'm sure, was helpful, but it is very important also to acknowledge that some days I love the phrase I don't have my cape on today,
Mhm.
and not every day do you need to. Some days are just about getting out, putting the gloves down. I'm not fighting today, and just going about things. So that's an important point too.
Mhm.
Jessica, you have such a good healing energy. I need to say it to you, like, it's so good. And
Right?
it's so good. Like, really,
Like
like,
yeah, no, I genuinely could not think of a better profession for you to be in, Jessica.
it's so good. Like, you just feel so seen, you feel so held. And I'm just like, there's a part of me, like the part of me that experienced the trauma, just wants to like lay down in her lap and cry. And just be like, let it all out, baby, let it out. I don't know what it is, but whatever is the path that took you to this job, big up that path because this is where you're supposed to be. I'm telling you.
I appreciate both of you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. So that leads us to our next question. Like, what does healing look like? If some days the path to healing or the journey can be more like it looks like thriving, um is the opposite of that. I don't know. Does it look like the soft life? I don't know. Like, what does that look like?
Thriving can mean soft life.
Yep.
Um, be. You don't have to be, what's the word people use now? That booked and busy sort of thing. That doesn't, your thriving is different than other people's thriving. Whatever is thriving for you
Mm-hmm.
is thriving.
I received that. Yeah.
Maybe life is the goal.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It's the goal. It's the goal. There's sometimes when I haven't had to be hard on myself.
Mm-hmm.
No, I start out being hard on myself, right? That's a start. But I've had to practice some type of discipline, especially when it comes to caring for myself. Actually, it's the parts of your life where you're being gentle with yourself that takes the most work for me. And it's like, have a meal.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have water today? Why are you skipping all your physiotherapy sessions? And, basically anything that is to communicate to myself that I am like important and that I am cared for, and anything that's going to root me back in my body, I skip it. And so a part of what I've had to learn is a certain type of discipline with myself in terms of caring for myself. Because, spending 1 hour fully engaged with my body for exercise, I come out of that and I'm winded. I'm like, Lord Jesus. Because God know I did dissociate from my body a long time. And so to be asked to now go back into it, I'm like, really? Really? But it's like it's the practice of living as me. But soft life is the goal. Like the goal really is to learn to speak to myself, and my first response to myself not be criticism. That's the goal. And that to take my own word for it, to not always feel that another person's opinion of a situation is superior to mine because they're somehow more equipped to make better sense of it, And for me, that's what soft life means, that like it feels soft in my brain when I'm engaging myself instead of like daggers.
Oh man, I really love that. That is so spot on. That is so spot on. What I hear is like, it sometimes just looks like being centered and knowing what you need, right? Like what you need, just like the way you wake up. I mean, it changes from day to day. And so just really being like in tune with what is the thing that makes you or can make you feel whole and in yourself and just get you through another day, you know? I love that. Did y'all have any? I think I had a bonus question, or at least we have a question in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. So let me go ahead and ask that before I forget. This question is from Dylan, and this was I think when we were talking about generational trauma. So he says, is there a name for not being aware of when you're performing verbal abuse on a person?
That's a good question. Carla's like, that's for you.
Yeah, Dylan, I don't know if you wanted to get off, if you wanted to unmute. You can unmute if you want.
Hello.
Hi.
Unmute to
Oh, no, I just
elaborate.
yeah, if you
Or,
wanted to elaborate, kind of your thoughts about the question.
it was when you were talking about um I came in kind of late. I came in at the part when one of you were talking about uh what is it? So a worker comes home and they go from one environment where verbal abuse is apparently okay, which is still kind of whack, right? But they go from that environment to home around their children and around their significant other. They're exercising verbal abuse in that and like in that setting as well. They're thinking it's normal, but they don't realize it's causing like, that kind of like it's inappropriate enough to qualify as verbal abuse in that environment. But they don't realize it, even if there are like subtle consequences to it. like say their child withdraws, but they still don't notice because they continually come from another environment where they seem to think it's appropriate. It's still a question. I don't think it's dissociation, but
It's a good
some,
question. I think there's a word for it. I think there should be a word, but they would just be verbally abusive and unaware. But I think it should be a word for it. Maybe there will be soon.
Yeah, I agree. There should be, because it's like if it's things that's like appropriate in one setting and not appropriate in another, like we really do need a term that captures that. Boy, Dylan, you take the psychology class and come here for come mash you up though. You take the psychology class
It
and come here for mash you up.
there's you used the word earlier, displacement. So there's displaced anger where it should be directed over here, but it's over here, but that's different to what you're saying. But it should be a word.
I was curious of the word because obviously verbal abuse is strong enough that no one wants to be accused of verbal abuse, but there's probably a softer word to describe um,
Oh,
the
I see.
displaced acts of verbal abuse, I suppose. Just like a
I
shorthand
see.
for
So
it,
something
but oh, sorry. I was just saying I appreciate everything else that was said after. It's probably not that important to know the exact the exact terms. I appreciate
it
everything
it should
said.
be a term. I it should be. It happens so often. It should be a distinction made, but you're just unknowingly committing abuse.
Maybe normalized something, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe, you might be the psychologist that comes up with the thing. Go ahead, Carl.
Thank
I,
you.
Crystal said maybe unconscious projection. Language is languaging here. So I actually wanted to raise something because I know that people experience it a lot where they're in a relationship with somebody who has experienced trauma and they're at the point where they think, I can't manage anymore in this relationship, but they are afraid to leave the relationship because they think it will do irreparable damage to the person on the basis of the trauma that they've sustained in the past. Is there an approach or a safe way that somebody can deal with that, Jessica? Because it's something that comes to me a lot of the time, especially with younger people who are able to like name their trauma and their partners can also identify it, but they get to the point where they're just like, I can't function here with you, but I'm scared to leave because I don't know if with everything you've been through, this will, be the straw.
I didn't realize I was muted. Sorry. That is a difficult situation to manage. You could be as communicative as possible if you haven't already. I would see what support system they have outside of you. Get all of them as informed as is appropriate, so that they could be a support system for this person. Depending on the nature of the negative impact of the relationship, maybe keep communication open following the breakup. But that it really would depend on a lot of different factors within the relationship and each individual. But definitely as much preparation as possible and make sure there's a support system outside of you, but you don't want to put yourself at risk unnecessarily as well. And because that, I think Dylan is saying this in the chat, there might be, is this potentially manipulation to get me to stay? And that happens, but be as communicative as possible, and where there's a support system, make sure that they are reaching out to them. That's not really something you can make sure that they do, but make sure that they know who they are, that this support system is aware of what's happening.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's something that I see come up again and again. And the issue of manipulation does come up where people are like, I don't know if I'm being manipulated or if this is a genuine thing, that the person really feels that this might be the straw. But I think ultimately it would be even more harmful for you to remain in a space that you feel is unsafe for you or it's not working for you. But that aspect of helping them to, if there's a support system, to connect with that support system, make sure that's in place and stuff, that's really useful. Thank you.
And if it's an immediate sort of, if you don't, or if you leave, you might need to call authorities, or that it really depends on what is happening. But if you suspect
Oh no,
that a person is safe physically,
we lost you for like a microsecond there.
oh, sorry. I was saying, if you think something will happen in the immediate, you might need to call authorities just to make sure that the person is, if they're making certain threats, just to make sure that they're physically safe. And that way you don't have to possibly put yourself at risk, but they are still safe.
Well, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I mean, I definitely learned a lot, and I hope that I trust that our audience definitely got a lot of golden nuggets and just really insightful takeaways. But this is where we bring it to a close. So I want to say thank you to everyone that took the time to be here this evening. Thank you for joining. Be sure to check out the rest of the events that Equality Bahamas has lined up for the 16 days of activism campaign throughout this week. And if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Be heard.